Well, that music can mean only one thing. It's Friday afternoon here in the Eastern time zone. Welcome to the Alter Live Show. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Before we get moving, we were just having a rousing conversation about armadillos and how dumb they are and why they're so dumb. Maeve, have you ever seen an actual armadillo before?
No, I have not.
Okay, so you've seen the stuffed ones.
Yes, I have a stuffed animal armadillo. We did cover this in our pre-production meeting because those are the things we talk about.
Totally. I've got a document right here with a bunch of actually important stuff, but this is the most important thing.
Yes, my stuffed animal armadillo.
So you've never even seen one in a zoo?
I mean, if I did, it wasn't very memorable because I can't remember it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Like, what's the weirdest animal I guess you've ever seen then?
Oh gosh, what are those ones that's like, I don't remember the name, but it looks like a zebra and a donkey, I want to say. Like half of it has stripes and the other half of it doesn't.
Half zebra, half donkey is
I don't know
called...
If it's I don't know if it's a donkey. It might be like a gazelle.
A zonkey?
No.
That's
No.
a thing.
Is it a zonkey?
Zonkey, Zonkey.
I don't know, but I saw something when I was little at the zoo, and it is a real thing because I looked it up after, and it has the behind is like a zebra, but the front, it's like some like gazelle type donkey something.
I'm looking at something called a zebroid. Oh, an okapi?
Yes, an okapi.
Yeah, okay. It's closely related to the giraffe, which is crazy.
I fed a giraffe once.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was really cool. It was at a zoo, but you were allowed to feed the giraffes, and so you could go up to like a tower because they're really tall. You have to reach the head, and their tongues are like really long and really black, and so they like come out. It's like a frog tongue kind of, and it's like you have to like kind of sprinkle the thing in because you don't want to touch the tongue. It was cool. It was a cool experience.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
What do they eat? Like plants? Bugs?
What I fed them was like that pellet food you get at like a petting zoo, but I'm sure they eat something in the trees.
Something in the trees.
Something up high.
Something in the trees. Yeah, we have Busch Gardens down here, which is like it's like a amusement park thing. They have an actual safari zone with like lions and all that, but then they have like 8 or 10 giraffe here. I gotta switch scenes here. They have like 8 or 10 giraffe and then like a bunch of hippos and all that, just like
cool,
hanging out. And it's very cool, but like you can't feed them. I'm envious of you getting to feed it.
Oh yeah, well it's funny because we went to that zoo as a kid. It was in Arizona because I had family out there. But then when we watched like Tiger King, which we don't need to get into because that's a controversial thing, I don't like it. But we watched that, and after I watched that, I was like, we were kind of thinking that zoo was pretty sketch. So it could be some kind of Tiger King operation.
Okay, all right. So it wasn't a zoo then.
It was, but it wasn't like.
But you didn't go to like the Philly Zoo or anything.
No, I've not been to the Philly Zoo.
Okay.
I mean, maybe one day. I've been to the San Diego Zoo, which is like a big deal.
That's good stuff.
That was a cool zoo.
Yeah.
But
cool.
Zoos in general can be a little
sketch, gross,
sketch,
poopy flavored. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Alter Live Show. Last week we started off on a high note with TV shows, and this week we are now talking about animals. So welcome in wherever you are joining us from. And yeah, welcome to this amazing thing called the Alter Live Show. We get the chance to talk with you, everybody on the other side of these cameras, about Alter Live, about the product, but more importantly, about very important things such as the New York Times. No, such as Wordle. Maeve has no clue what Wordle is. Maeve,
I have
tell me
no
before
idea.
I click this link up here, tell me what you know of the hit game that has been sweeping the internet for the last 2 weeks.
I don't know how I've seen it, but I don't know how I don't know what it is at this point. I
Yeah.
think I'm on my phone enough to have probably figured it out, but I have no idea. I see definitely has word in the title, so we can
Oh,
start there.
wow.
Yes, it could be a word game, like a word scrambly type word search crossword thing.
Okay.
I saw something like it looked like an emoji. I could be way off, but there were like colored block emoji looking
Mm-hmm.
things. Um, I have no idea. I see
Okay.
like my friends using it, but then I also see celebrities talking about it, so
Yes.
I have no idea. No idea.
So, have you ever played the game Mastermind?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I have not played that game.
Mastermind is you have someone who has a series of colors behind like a hidden thing. And I think
Okay.
it's like 5 or 6, however many. And then
Mhm.
they have like colored pegs. And then it's basically like 20 questions. So then you're
Okay.
asking, like, you're putting, is this red? Is it pink? Is it, you're putting down a sequence. And
Okay.
then they tell you if you have the right color and if it's in the right place. And so then you have like a certain amount, might be 20 times or something. You have a certain amount of guesses to guess the actual thing behind the hooded thing. I
Mm.
love Mastermind. And so Wordle actually has been around since like September of 2021. I actually started playing it in November of 2021. But here's the simple rules real quick. I'll blow this up so you can see it. You got to guess the word in 6 tries. Each guess must be a valid 5-letter word. Hit the enter to submit. After you guess, the color of the tiles will change to show how close your guess was to the word. So, for the example, W is in the correct spot. I is in the improper spot. U does not exist. Would you like to try today's Wordle with me?
Yes, I will say I have first time game anxiety.
It's okay. I'm going to be here to guide you. And I actually I'm in a group chat with a bunch of people that I work with at the church. And we try to get the best score every day. And I will tell you, everybody from Bay Hope watching right now, I am the Wordle king around the office, okay? I routinely get it in 3, sometimes 2 guesses. Let's continue. Also, Wordle was developed by some guy in the UK for his friend back in September, and then the New York Times bought it like 2 weeks ago for like over $1 million,
Wow.
which is nuts.
Very cool.
So let's whip through this real quick. There's a couple of good starting words that will get a lot of the common letters out of the way. One of them is steam. One of them is meats. It's just the same thing as steam, except in different order. One of them is rain, RAINE, because, if you think about where the distribution of letters is and all of that. One of them is adieu. If you want to try to get all them vowels out of the way. You want to pick one, or you want me to just go like I normally?
I kind of want to watch you and see the master at work.
Okay, so we're going to start with adieu.
Okay.
So there E is in the right place, and there is a U. Well, I already solved today. So I already kind of know what's coming up. So normally if I know that E is there, I'm going to try to hold on. So that's either going to be an ES, an ER, or an ED, right? Because if you think about English, you think about word construction. The U is the funky one because the U doesn't belong here. It belongs in any of the other 4. So what I would normally do now is I would try to find, again, already knowing the word, so I'm not going to... I'm going to try... Is this a word? Yep. Okay. So I found my ER, and I now know there's an L here. So, there's a U in one of these 3. There's going to be an L in one of these 3, and then that's an ER. So L blank U, nope. So this is my thought process. Again, I already know what the word is. This is probably rivet. This is the content people joined us for today.
I have to say, I'm gonna have to like try this a bunch of times because I'm listening. I'm trying to learn.
Yeah,
The wheels are not turning
that's
in my
okay.
brain right now.
So I know it's going to be some blank blank er. I know there's a u and an l in these three here. I'm just going to solve it right now because I can't think of a word that it isn't. So everybody that plays Wordle, turn away. So when they all turn green, that's great. See, and you can see I got it in one guess here, which that was just screwing around, and then I got it in 3 here. And then the magic of Wordle is 2 things. Number 1, you can hit the share button, and then you can send these results around, which is what you're seeing on socials everywhere with the green boxes and all the things. And then you only get 1 Wordle per day. It resets at midnight Greenwich Mean Time. So that's the magic of the whole thing. You get 6 chances for the whole day to guess the word, and if you get it right, it saves your streak. And if you get it wrong, it'll still save your streak, but your friends are going to ridicule you. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. This seems dangerous.
You still anxious here?
I mean, in a good way, I think.
Okay. Well, we're going to switch off. Yeah. I'm watching people log in, and I don't want them to know the Wordle if they've played already. Hopefully they... I apologize to everybody that's watching that didn't solve the Wordle. We're going to get into a topic today. Maeve, yes. I'm gonna pop you in the driver's seat here as I flip this thing over and get rid of this thing. What are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about online church. Is online church real church?
Dun, dun, dun. I don't have a sting there. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I could do this.
Oh, that's cool. Different vibe, but I like it. All right. Yeah. So, as you guys know, like it's really no secret that the church world has changed so drastically over the course of these past 2 years, and for online church kind of went from a novelty to a necessity. This was that great quote came from Alan White from a couple interviews ago.
Check us out. Check it out in the playlist below.
Totally. It was a great interview. But that really stayed with me because it really did. It started with you kind of knowing what online church was. Maybe it was an option at your home church. But then all of a sudden we all could not meet together. We had to go online. And that stayed for maybe a year and a half, still happening now. But now, as kind of we're entering a new year, people's minds are starting to shift. We're starting to rethink church, like how has church changed and what are we going to do in the future. And so this topic of online church has starting to come up, and there was a recent article in the New York Times by Tish Harrison Warren talking about, it was an opinion piece, so she was saying that churches should stop offering online services. We're not gonna like nitpick this article, but for those of you who aren't familiar with it, basically she said, why should we stop online church services is because this is the way to love God and our neighbors. She said this is the same reason in 2020 why we had to be online to love God and our neighbors. So throughout her article, she talks about why she thinks this. She says that it diminishes worship and us as people, and talking about the idea of that if church is online, it is kind of making church and worship as an elective, something we can opt in and opt out of, rather us intentionally going to a place and being together. And so there was one part that she talked about, talking about the homebound of people who can't make it to church for various reasons. She said that people in the church body should go to them and share the sermon or be with them and pray with them and be in fellowship with them. And This article was well written. It was well thought out, and we're not here to pick apart this article, but it's starting a conversation, because then people responded to this with their own stories. Some people agreed with her and said, "Yeah, I agree that online churches should stop, or churches should stop offering online services." But then there were some other people who didn't agree and said, um, why wouldn't we do this? There was one quote that stuck out to me, was from someone who said, "So at a time when religious attendance is at an all-time low, suggesting that a wonderful technological innovation that actually brings people to a faith setting should stop is more counterproductive. It's bizarre. There are so many people for whom this is the only option if they are to worship at all, such as those who are homebound, distance challenged, lacking transportation, or facing weather or financial constraints." And then this inspired other people to write thoughtful thought pieces about their own experience. There's a really, really great thoughtful piece by Melissa Flora Bixler, I believe, and thank you, Andy, for bringing that up. And kind of the quote that sums up this whole thought is, "I've come to see Zoom church as its own sacrament, the heartache of separation present with us as we work to find the good news with the bodies we have." So, check out these articles if you want, and we're just going to kind of open a conversation about this. I am personally very new to this digital church world. My experience is that I went to a church, and they offered online services, but it was always an option. It was not like the main focus. It was another vehicle to attend church. But Andy is a digital pastor, and he has a lot more experience about digital church. And so I wanted to ask him about his experience. How did you get into the digital church world, and did you ever struggle with the idea that online church might not be a real thing? And then how did you find peace about it?
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
Okay, how did you get into the digital church world?
Yeah. And I want to preface all this by saying Maeve and I work for Altar Live, which is a digital church company, essentially. I mean, yes, we offer events and all of that, but the very core of it is a religious product that we not only market to churches, but hope that we can help churches establish community and really accomplish the goal of online church. So that is the disclaimer here. I don't think it should stop us from having a real conversation, not only in this live stream, but going forward. So if you are watching this and you've made it this far, first off, thank you. And second off, throw in the comments. We would love, or the chat if you're live, we would love to have this conversation with you. There's also going to be some links in the description of this for our group, our Facebook group that we have. It's a closed Facebook group, but you can pop in there and have this conversation with us. Okay, let's get that out of the way. I actually got in, so I was a worship pastor for about 10 years, full-time 10 years. I hate saying this, but I have basically made my career in the church world. I'm 38. I was 28 when I started full-time ministry. But before that, I was kind of doing it part-time at a bunch of other churches for a couple of years as well, while I was doing some IT and database tech work type stuff. So I am a career Christian, for lack of a better term. And I have made my living leading worship in groups of people in a physical space. I never had to deal, and I say never, I didn't really ever have to worry about preaching or teaching or singing or leading worship to a group that was gathered all over the country or all over the world. Because when I was leading worship, it wasn't really a thing. Fast forward to 2019, the beginning of 2019, I was living in Atlanta with my wife and kids, And I had been leading worship at a church for about 6 years. In the midst of that, I had opened a gym, a nonprofit faith-based gym that was designed around, again, groups of people getting in a room together to get healthy, but also to pray and form community and all that. And the church that my brother and sister work for, called Bay Hope Church, a mega church, basically, they had been streaming their digital services for about 10 years. Streaming has never been the issue. People have been streaming services and streaming content and doing all that for a long time. Bay Hope had been doing it for about 10 years prior as well. And all of a sudden, they had a bunch of people that were watching the service over the span of 10 years, but they had a couple thousand people each week that were watching the service, weren't really engaging, but were just watching.
Right.
And they said, hey, we need somebody, ostensibly a pastor, but we need somebody that can oversee this, can create community, can drive it, all of those things. And so they started looking. My brother and sister told me about the opportunity. I applied. I interviewed for it, all that stuff. I had, I guess, the right mix of on-camera, whatever, charisma, if you want to call it that. I hate that word, but being able to talk into a camera, as well as the technical background. And they hired me, and I moved. Our entire family moved down in June of 2019. And I never really grappled with, is this a real thing, until I got boots on the ground after about the first 2 months. Because before that, it was just sort of like this, oh my gosh, we're moving. I'm moving back to Florida with my family, and it's amazing and terrifying and all this other stuff. And all of a sudden, about 2 months in, so I started in June of 2019, by about school time, August, September, I had a real crisis in my own heart of, wait a minute, I've been leading worship in groups of people. I have been leading workouts with groups of people, physically present amongst me. Now, you're telling me that I have to create community, I have to create engagement, I have to create motivation out of a camera and a laptop and maybe a screen. Like, what? And that was a real test for me, even just starting out. And my wife and I had a lot of conversations about it.
Yeah.
I ended up coming out on the side of the Great Commission says, Matthew 28, Jesus is about ready to ascend back to heaven. And he's looking at his disciples after he's been resurrected. He's looking at his disciples and he says, look, your mission now is to go to the ends of the earth, the Jerusalems and Judeas and Samarias, and to the ends of the earth, and carry the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ died, resurrected, coming again. And I realized that at the time, they were able to use this new technological invention called the road, which doesn't seem like a lot, but Rome had taken over most of the known world at that time, or pretty much all of the Western world at that time. And they had established a system of roads which made everything easier to get to. And on top of the roads, they had safety and all sorts of other stuff. And the technology of the time was the road and the wheel. And all of a sudden, Jesus is saying, hey, disciples, go and use the roads that are now here to carry my gospel. And now Jesus is saying, hey, look, the road might not look like an actual road. Now it might look like an Ethernet connection or a Wi-Fi signal, but you can very easily carry the gospel to the ends of the earth. And that settled me down a lot. The people that say that it's not church, well, we can get into that in a minute. That's how I found peace about it, was really going through the Great Commandment, or the Great Commission, excuse me, and the idea that I'm supposed to go forth.
Right. Right. Yes. About that whole, like what you said, and then also our friend Justine Morris from Foursquare said, is that that using technology and using the internet and using your computers, that's us leaning into the communication tools of our time. Exactly what you said, Andy, about how the disciples used the road. And that was their new technology. This is our new technology. Being able to go online and, speak the word of God, and anyone, anywhere in the world can somehow like willingly go and listen to it or somehow maybe stumble upon it. Like that, the idea of that is just so powerful.
Yes.
Yeah. So did you, because, we've seen so much discourse on the internet. If you scroll through Twitter, if you search online church, there are so many people putting their thoughts and opinions out there, especially with these articles coming out. Some are nicely worded, more nicely worded than others.
What do you mean, Maeve? Tell me. What are some of the words that are being used?
Guys, I encourage you to look at this yourself. I'm not gonna
go to Twitter. Here, Twitter. No, I'm not gonna do that.
No. In your own time, personal time. But there's so much discourse right now, and to be honest, I feel like this is the first time I'm really seeing it in action. Did you have any pushback in the beginning? Because I know that online church and live streaming and all this stuff and having a digital campus was a thing before the pandemic. Did you have any pushback, and how did you handle it?
Yeah, 100%. And anybody that's out there watching this right now that is having pushback, I know, I see you. I see you, brothers and sisters. And I feel you. And so I feel your pain, and I feel the struggle that if you do truly believe in this digital expression of church, I in particular had pushback from the church I was leaving, which this is no disparagement towards them, but the church I was leaving was a little more old school in its approach to church. And by old school, it was everything was a little bit older and slower. And again, not a bad thing at all. That church is doing great things and they're reaching people. But at the time, there was no pandemic, and they were a little bit hesitant to drop. This is what I mean by a little bit old school. They were a little bit hesitant to drop money on tech pieces that they didn't think they were going to be able to see the quote unquote benefit out of.
Right.
Of course, fast forward 9 short months after that, and I'm getting calls left, right, and center, even from that church, saying, "Hey, about that streaming thing, can you help us?" And so I'm doing consults with them. I was doing consults with 20 and 30 churches, trying to help them get their streaming stuff up. But so at Bay Hope, the leadership, top-down leadership, lead pastor Matthew Hartsfield, the executive team, and then all of the pastoral team, who sits kind of under/to the side of the executive team, 100% behind digital. They didn't understand it, but they were 100% behind it, which is why they were hiring for the position. Even still, we've got a staff of around about 100. Even still, there are people inside of the staff that are not necessarily actively pushing back. They are passively pushing back because they don't believe it's a true, real thing. And again, we're all on the same team. We're all pushing on the same wall, trying to knock it down. But there is a definite apathy even inside of the staff. And again, not bad people. They just don't understand. And that's my job, to help people understand. And in the 2.5, almost 3 years I've been there, it has turned a lot. And especially during the pandemic, everybody saw the necessity of what we were doing.
Right. Right. And it makes me think, because, I think people, when they want to, fully in person or fully online, I think they have this idea that it's going to be perfect either way. And, no matter what you choose, I think there's always going to be pros and cons to that situation. So I think it's just helpful to realize that. So, you're not going to be disappointed either way. Because I think if we have, this new really exciting thing, and honestly, the new and exciting thing right now is going to be going back in person. So before it was, being online, that's a new thing. But now, since we were online for so long, being in person is a new and exciting thing. So to both of those sides, there's going to be pros and cons. So just, you got to keep that in mind and not let that completely turn you off from, like, write that idea off. It's interesting because, so my experience, I touched a little bit on that. What I saw in the church world is that live streaming was always an option. It was, and it still is. For some churches, that works really well because, we have some churches who do the hybrid approach where you can join online or you can join in person. But I'd never seen that some churches operate solely online. I'd never heard of that, and it had been a thing even before the pandemic. And what I thought was really interesting, talking to people who started going fully online, is how they were able to shift the culture from being from having the live streaming not be like the option or put on the back burner of how people would take the time if they were live streaming from an in-person service, or even just live streaming in their own home. They would kind of take the time to realize that there is another person on the other side of the screen watching, and it wasn't just like a I'm live streaming out into the void kind of thing. How I've slowly seen that culture shift. And have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I just got off and I don't, we've never talked about this, so I don't know, but I had about a 2-hour seminar that I was part of. I watched, I wasn't part of it, on VR church yesterday. Wow. Again, completely different expression all told, but the idea is that we're stepping out of Web 2.0 into Web 3.0, and it's going to take a couple of years to be fully adopted. But Web 2.0 was very services forward. So Web 1.0 was just a lot of websites, and then Web 2.0 is a service forward thing. So you've got Google offering services, and Microsoft offerings, and Apple, and kind of, Amazon offering services. Web 3.0 is designed to be decentralized to the point of democratic in its makeup. Ideally, what the web was at the very beginning, and nobody had the technology. So what that means is that Web 3.0, just like everything else in the world, is going to be very individually focused. It's going to be very much, you can choose, and we're seeing this. We're seeing this in our streaming services. We're seeing this in our music choices. What do you want? When do you want it? How fast do you want it? And how much are you willing to pay for it? Well, you transfer that into the church realm, and the Web 2.0 idea is, well, churches are just another content machine, and we're just going to continue to provide YouTube videos and all this other things. The pandemic accelerated what guys like me and a number of other people, a number of other digital pastors pre-pandemic. There weren't a lot of them. There's a lot more now. But before, there were not a whole lot of us. And we had been consistently trying to figure out how to engage. And that's just a fancy word for connect with people. Because being a pastor, the main job of being a pastor is not to preach, not to teach, those are all things. The main job of being a pastor is caring for people and connecting with them in such a way that there is a one-to-one human connection, a one-to-one human relationship, and through that relationship, a God-to-human relationship. Well, the pushback before or pre-pandemic from most people was, well, how are you going to connect with people online through a screen? That's not real connection. Just like in the New York Times article where there was somebody who said Christians need to hear babies crying in the church. They need to see the reddened eyes of a friend across the aisle. And I don't think that's wrong. However, we have gotten to the point now where our technological tools are not necessarily a substitution, but they are almost equal footing. Yes, you're missing out on some of the, like, you can't see my whole body, so you don't know if I'm slumping back in my chair or if I'm leaning forward, or, you know, like, you can't tell if I'm tapping my foot. But by and large, this will get us about 80% of the way there. Flip into VR, which is Web 3.0, and now the barrier starts to break down a little bit more. And so that might be like 85% of the way there. Pretty soon, Apple's going to release its thing, Google will release another thing, Amazon will release, and so on. And then we've got a boulder rolling down the hill that get out of the way, because it's going to crush you if you say no. All that to say, your big overall question was, have you seen things change? Yes, and they're going to continue to change.
Yeah, I think what you said interesting. You use that word engagement, which I think gets thrown around a lot. I'm going completely off script here. So.
Let's go. Let's have this conversation.
So I recently wrote a piece about kind of rethinking engagement. This is not, well, yeah, it is a shameless plug. Go check out this piece. It's on our website.
Absolutely. Alterlive.com.
Yes, alterlive.com. And so what I often do is that if there's like a buzzword, I'll often go to the handy dandy dictionary and look up what the definition is. And so the first thing that popped up was basically like the point of engagement is to entertain. And that was like, that's not, what it, I mean, yes, I guess it makes sense in some cases, but in this case, when I'm using it, that's not what it's supposed to mean. And it's like you said, it's all about meaningful connections. And so I think as you're kind of talking about digital church and being online, and what Alter Live does that's so great is that you are able to, this was for small groups. Oh no, it was a different one. I think it's called Improving Your Church Engagement. Right, yep, that one. Yep. And what was I saying about digital church? Oh yes. So that, I think that's what's so great about Alter Live. It's because it's more than just watching a service on a screen. We specifically, like our team specifically designed these features so you can actually take a seat next to someone. Like if you can't be in person, or if this is your church hub, we tailored to make it as realistic to a real in-person church service. I mean, not a real in-person. This is a real church service. It's an in-person, as similar to an in-person church service.
Right.
But it's interesting because I think that word engagement, kind of, there's like a gray area there for, it's like people don't exactly know the definition. I think one definition is yes, we want you. If it's an engaging movie, you're entertained. But church is not a movie. It is an active experience, and so it is possible to do that online. And Alter Live saw that problem. Like, this is why we created this company, is because we saw the problem is that some online church services, it did become like a movie. It did become like a streaming service that you put your pajamas on, go sit down on the couch, and just kind of like mind-numbingly zone out, watch the service. That is why we created this product, because you can actually make those connections with people. You can engage in the church term. You can make those connections with people. You can sit next to them. You can be in fellowship with them. So yeah, I think as we go into this year further is to really remember what engagement means in a church setting rather than the mainstream world.
Absolutely. And one final word from me on this before we belabor the point too much. The biggest pushback that we see from everybody here, let's get serious here.
Okay.
The biggest pushback and the biggest leg to stand on for a lot of people saying that digital church cannot be a church is that there is no person-to-person real connection. And I don't disagree. I literally just got done shooting a video that we're going to be posting whenever for our social medias, or our social media platforms, that talks about the younger generation and how they during the pandemic suffered more than most of us because they didn't have person-to-person connection. And that's kind of backwards, because you'd think, oh, well, the generation, especially like my kids are digital natives, have never not known a time in their life when there wasn't an iPhone, when there wasn't an iPad, when there wasn't laptops and Wi-Fi all around. And you would think, okay, well, they'd be fine because they're used to connecting on it. But what a lot of research is finding is it's in fact the opposite, that the person-to-person connection that most kids were finding, even if you're homeschooled, that you were still finding in co-op sessions, or even just going to the store to smell perfume and, be physically in a space with people. God wired us to be in community with people. So can digital church ever replace somebody physically handing you bread and juice to take communion with? No. It's not supposed to. However, we can get most of the way there and then kind of try to figure out the next steps from there. I would never, ever, ever say, digital church is going to exist forever. Like we're not going to avoid it anymore. But the idea that it's going to ever replace physical church, both are going to exist in their own streams, parallel to each other, advancing the kingdom of God in its own separate, succinct, and unique ways. And who are we to stand in the way of the advancement of the thing that Peter literally heard from Jesus, that the gates of hell will not prevail against? I'm done preaching.
No, that was great. I don't know where to go from there.
There's nowhere to go from there, Maeve. Well, I mean, there's tons of places to go from there. But I'm going to start the music up here, unless you wanted to add anything else to our discussion here.
I think the only thing I can say is that this conversation is just going to continue, in your homes, online. So jump in, think for yourself, figure out what works for you. This might not work for you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We're meeting a need, and there are a lot of people out there that I've met and that people I haven't met that digital church is changing their lives for the good.
Amen to that. And if we can help in any of that, let us know. We would love to empower you and your church, digital, physical, phygital, which is the combination of physical and digital, whatever it's going to be. Altar Live's here to help you. You can always jump into altarlive.com, book a meeting with one of us, probably going to be Stephanie, our CEO, because she's so adept at doing those, and you'll get to find out exactly what Altar Live is about. But for the time being, we're going to close up shop. Maeve, thanks for this conversation. This has been great.
Oh, I'm so glad. It was a great time.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here. We will talk to you next time. Love ya.
Bye, guys.